Hello everyone, welcome to Carnivorous Plants Hub. Today I have an amazing video for you. We're going to be talking about Mexican Butterworts, or more commonly known as Pinguicula, or pings for short. This is going to be the ultimate guide in Pinguicula care and repotting. While we discuss care, I'm going to show you how to remove your pings, separate them, and eventually repot them. You can see this one here is definitely due to be separated and repotted. It's been in this planter for about 2 years now and needs to be separated and repotted pretty desperately. Real quick though, before we start separating and repotting these pings, I have a major announcement. As of the release of this video, I am officially selling my first live plants. I have several ping Sethos available for purchase today. If you've been following my channel, you know my dream has always been to start my own carnivorous plant nursery. I've been selling substrate for a few months now, but this is the first time I've actually sold live plants. These Sethos you're seeing right here are some examples of the plants that I have for sale. All the Sethos for sale will be a minimum of 1 inch and will come bare root. I'm also selling ping substrate and a planter that is perfect size for your new ping. You can buy the plant, planter, and substrate all in a kit if that's something you're interested in. For more information, please head on over to my store once this video is finished. The links are in the description and the pinned comment. Thank you so much for all your support. It truly is the reason I'm here today. I appreciate all of you so much, and I just can't wait to sell you a live plant. Okay, like stated earlier, all the pings that I'm separating and repotting today are Pinguicula Sethos, which is the same ping that I'm selling. A Sethos is a hybrid of an Ellersay and a Morinensis. This ping can range anywhere from a bright pink to green, depending on how much light it gets. In this video, I'll show you an example of some that I keep under grow lights and one that I keep in a windowsill, so you can see the difference. The pings you're looking at right now are kept under a grow light. Generally speaking, with most pings, the more light that they're exposed to, the more color that they get. I think pings are some of the best beginner carnivorous plants to grow. They have a wide range of tolerance for light, they're very forgiving when it comes to watering, they don't require a winter dormancy period and can be grown the same way all year round, they can survive on a sunny windowsill, they're also great for catching gnats and fruit flies, making them perfect for a bathroom or kitchen windowsill, especially if you put them above the sink. These little carnivorous plants will destroy a whole colony of gnats or fruit flies. Just look at this footage that I have from an outbreak that happened inside my grow tent from a couple of years ago. I took this plant from my windowsill and put it in my grow tent. Actually, this is the young version of the clump that you'll be seeing today. It basically rid my grow tent of any gnats. Also, please make sure that you stick around to the end of the video. I'm going to be using some amazing toppers to repot these newly separated pings. Both of these toppers will be available for sale in my store, along with the pings and all the substrate. I'm using pumice and crushed glass, and I just can't wait to show you those results. I'm going to be pulling these pings out of their containers and pulling them apart. While I go through this process, I'll be covering all the Pinguicula care tips you need to be able to grow these amazing carnivorous plants successfully. Let's start by me showing you how to get the plants out of their existing planter and start to separate them. This ping clump has been growing in here for about 2 years now and is way overdue for some separating. You can see the brown stuff here between the pings. It's basically just dead leaves, years worth of dead leaves. They're so crammed now that they're starting to take up kind of a rosette form. This really shouldn't happen. They should have more room to be able to stretch their leaves outward. This is one of the main reasons that we need to get them out of this pot. This clump here should just pull out as one big ping. There we go. Now that we have it out, we need to start separating these roots. The more substrate you can remove before trying to pull them apart, the better. Pings are very delicate and can be difficult to pull apart. Pulling off the substrate will allow the roots to come apart much easier. There's always a lot of buildup on the underside of a ping clump, dead leaves and old substrate. The more of the stuff that you can get off before separating, the better. Here's a really good look at the roots of a ping. You can see they have very shallow root systems. The shallow root systems make pings very flexible when it comes to potting them up. You don't need a super deep planter. They can survive in just a couple of inches of substrate. Unlike the other carnivorous plants who typically have long root systems and like to stretch their legs. Now that you've had a good look at their roots, let's start pulling these pings apart. Pings are very delicate. You have to be very careful when handling them. Their leaves do come off very easily. When you go to separate these, you have to be gentle and don't force it. It may take some teasing and some back and forth, but eventually they'll start to slowly pull apart. Here's another great look at the roots. You can also see some of the dead leaves that we need to pull off before repotting. Usually, the dead leaves come off pretty easily, but sometimes they take a little persuading. It's almost impossible to clean off these dead leaves while your plant is sitting in its planter. It's always a good idea to take advantage of being able to hold them in the palm of your hand upside down. This makes it so much easier to clear away the dead leaves. There we go, one down. Look at those beautiful white roots. You can see on the second one here that I accidentally pulled off some of the leaves. No worries though. Did you know that you can propagate these leaf pullings? If you pull a leaf off, set it to the side. I'll show you an easy way to propagate these leaf cuttings here in just a few minutes. While I start working on these others that need to be separated, let's start talking about caring for these pings. The first thing that I want to talk about is what's called the succulent stage. Like I said earlier, these plants do not go dormant. If you put them under a grow light inside, they'll just keep on growing year round. However, if you put them in a windowsill and you live in an area that has a colder season with less light, they can go into what's called the succulent stage. In this stage, the leaves stop producing the sticky substance that catches insects. During this time, they do not need insects. Their leaves will change shape and become smaller and more rounded. During this time, the ping requires significantly less water. The succulent stage is triggered by less light and colder temperatures. They'll snap out of the succulent stage when temps and photoperiods increase. The leaves will become carnivorous again and you can resume your normal watering. We'll talk more about watering in a moment. Remember, they do not require the succulent stage. Pings have evolved to preserve energy as they get less light and colder weather. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about watering. When it comes to carnivorous plants, watering is one of the biggest things that people constantly get wrong. The great news with pings is that they are a bit more tolerant than most carnivorous plants when it comes to water. Let's start by talking about the type of water that you're going to need. Pings should only be watered with pure, distilled, rain, or reverse osmosis water. Pings are more tolerant to dissolved solids than other carnivorous plants, but can still die if there's enough buildup in their substrate. Ideally, you want to water with a ppm, that's parts per million, of under 50. This will ensure that your ping has the best chance of survival. Getting yourself a zero water pitcher can be a lifesaver for obtaining pure water. I'm able to get about 30 gallons of water from just one filter. I have an in-depth video in the description talking about the zero water pitcher. I also have a link in the description to buy one on Amazon if you're interested. Trust me, they're well worth having if you want to collect carnivorous plants. Now that you know what kind of water to give your ping, let's talk about how much water these Mexican Butterworts need. There's no perfect answer to how often you should water. If anyone ever tells you every 3 days, this is more than likely not accurate. There are just too many factors at play. The season that you're in, current temperatures, humidity in the air, how long under the grow light, and how close. Are they in a windowsill? Are they in the succulent stage? How big is the planter? There's not a one-size-fits-all for watering. It's extremely nuanced. Ideally, you would water a ping with the tray from the bottom. Give it enough water in the tray to ensure that the substrate gets wet all the way to the surface where the ping is sitting. Once the tray dries up, allow the surface of the substrate to dry out before filling your dish up again. Pings like to dry out just a bit in between waterings. Do not let the planter go 100% dry. The roots should always have access to at least a little bit of moisture. When a Venus flytrap is in the succulent stage, you'll want to allow them to dry out quite a bit more before watering again. It's also worth noting that when light and temps are reduced, even just a little bit, the substrate will hold the water longer. I would allow the planter to dry out almost to the bottom before watering again while they're in the succulent stage. Sometimes this can be once every 2 to 4 weeks. It really depends on the size of the planter. The smaller the planter, the more often that you're going to need to water. I should also note that pings can actually be top watered. They can even sit in a planter that doesn't have any drainage holes. You just have to make sure that you're on top of watering them, as these planters tend to dry out really quick. I recommend tray watering. I think it's best, but if you're consistent with good watering habits, top watering a planter with no drainage holes can actually work. Just make sure not to overwater. You don't want the plant to be sitting in a puddle of water. This is easy to do when there's no drainage holes. If you top water, try your best not to get the pings wet from the top. It's okay once in a while, but they do not like being wet on the plant. Do not miss them or give them any water on the leaves. It's okay if you occasionally splash a few drops, just don't make it a habit of getting them wet frequently. This can also lead to rot. When repotting, if you get some debris on your leaves, it's okay to spray them off. Just keep the plant itself dry and free of water for the majority of the time. You do want to be really careful. If you overwater a ping, they are subject to rot. If they sit in wet, boggy conditions frequently, there's a good chance that they can rot and eventually die. We're going to talk about their substrate here in just a moment, but it's important to note that they like a well-draining substrate. They want to be wet, but they want that water to drain and the substrate to be drier at the top, not muddy and wet all the time. The great news with watering is that pings tend to be pretty tolerant both ways, whether you overwater or underwater. My experience has always been that they are pretty forgiving. I like to try my best to give them the best watering care that I can, but we're all busy and sometimes that leads to improper watering. With pings, most of the time, they will forgive you. Okay, the next thing that I want to talk about is lighting, but real quick before I do that, I just wanted to thank you so much for being here. Make sure to pour some water on the like button and subscribe to help my channel grow. My dream has always been to start my own carnivorous plant nursery. You being here is helping me achieve that dream. You can support my channel and small business by heading over to my store. Also, if you're in the market for a ping other than a Sethos, or any other carnivorous plant for that matter, make sure to head on over to California Carnivores. I strongly recommend them. They're one of the biggest and most knowledgeable carnivorous plant nurseries in the entire world. They have huge selections year-round and they're always willing to answer your questions and help out. You can use my code BUGEATER for an additional 10% off your order. That's BUGEATER, BUGEATER. Okay, let's go ahead and get back to the pings and talk about some lighting. Okay, next we're going to talk about lighting. Pings are definitely more of an indoor plant. My experience with trying to grow them outside is they don't like it when it's super hot and they don't like a lot of direct sun. I strongly urge you to try to grow them indoors with a grow light or on a sunny windowsill. A good grow light like my Barina 2-foot 24 watts can do a really nice job coloring pings up. As you can see here, I have 2 Barinas per shelf, which gives each shelf about 48 watts of total light. This output is enough to really give my pings some good color. If you just have 1 or 2 pings, I might suggest the Sansi grow bulb or even the clip-on lights. I love Sansi's 24 watt grow bulb. It has an E26 socket, which is standard, and you can plug it into any lamp socket. Or if you want to get a clip-on light, Sansi also offers one that's a 20 watt. Please note, each bulb is 10 watts, so you may need to direct both of those bulbs to your pings. It is a clip light though, and the clip on the light makes everything a lot easier. I keep my lights on my pings for 12 hours every night. The amount of color that you get on your ping will depend on how long your lights are on and how close your pings are. I can get really good color at about 8 inches away, but the color will intensify if you move the ping closer. You can really play around with this and see what you like. The color of pings will typically range from green to light pink to dark pink, depending on the color. Other pings out there, like the Cyclosecta or Lilac Lollipop, can turn a dark purple color the more exposure they get. Either way, the more light that they get typically means the more color that they will produce. The other option for lighting indoors is a sunny windowsill. Depending on how much sun your windowsill gets, you can expect your ping to stay green or start to get a light pink tint. Here's a good example of a ping that I have that gets about 3 hours of sun a day. You can see it's super healthy and growing really big, but it doesn't get that really nice pink color. I would need to give it a bit more light for it to start to turn pink, like the pings that I grow under my grow lights. Okay, now that you know about Pinguicula lighting and watering needs, let me show you what I'm about to do with all these pings that I just separated. Look at all those dead leaves. It's crazy how much stuff I was able to pull off of these pings. Look at all those beautiful pings just waiting to find their new home. My goal is to either sell these pings or to use them as mother plants for leaf pullings to propagate new pings. So, I don't want to plant each of these individually. Don't worry though, I'm going to plant a couple individually here in just a few minutes so I can show you what that process is. Just bear with me for a moment while I put most of these pings in this planter. Just look at that beautiful substrate. That's my mix that I hand mix and hand rinse. It's the same mix that I'm selling. It has peat moss, pumice, crushed glass, sand, and perlite. I'll be going over this substrate in depth here in just a few minutes. This is actually a tray that I had street tacos from Costco in. I've poked holes in the clear plastic where I've laid down the substrate. The black tray holds water. The clear tray sits down in the black tray. Water wicks up through the clear tray from the holes that I put in it. It's a great way to plant a lot of pings close to each other without using a lot of substrate or water. Here's a look at some of the trays I have sitting in my tent, just full of pings waiting for their turn to be sold or to be used for leaf pullings. A lot of these are just a bit too small to sell, but will be ready soon. Now, before I show you how to repot just one ping into a planter, I also have to show you what I'm doing with all these leaf pullings. Every ping I've put in that tray, I flipped over and pulled a couple of leaves off, like this one here. Usually each ping gives me 3 to 5 leaves. I only pull leaves from the bottom that you can't see from the top. This helps the ping maintain a nice aesthetic. Once I have all my leaves, I lay down a paper towel and soak it with a Core Gear mister. There's a link in the description for my mister if you're interested. Once the paper towel is good and wet, I lay down all my leaf pullings. You can use anything that is clear and can be covered. The goal here is to create like a humidity dome. Even a bowl with some clear plastic wrap will work. No need to get super fancy here. This is my wife's cupcake holder. Shh, make sure and be quiet. Don't tell her that I borrowed it. She doesn't have to know. After a few weeks, you'll start getting some baby pinks. Here's a cool video showing some previous propagations that I've done. Look how cute they are. This is after about 60 days. Soon I'll have another small group of pings that are ready to be sold to you. Now we're going to repot some pings more for my own personal collection. The other pings that I've shown you up to this point are more for growing to sell and to use as mother plants. The homes are more temporary. These next two pings I repot are more for my personal collection. The goal here is to divide these pings and keep one in each of their own planters. I want to use some toppers to make them more aesthetically pleasing. This ping is super beautiful. I love its color and shape. It's a great size for repotting and it's going to look great in its own planter. For the first one here, I'm going to use a planter that's available for purchase at my store. You can purchase it as an add-on with the soil, or you can buy it as a ping repotting kit. You can buy the ping, the planter, and the soil in one kit, so you're ready to pot it up when it arrives. You can also buy the crushed glass and pumice as add-ons at my store. Here is my specially formulated Pinguicula soil mix. This is a combination of peat moss, pumice, perlite, crushed glass, and sand. You don't have to use crushed glass, I just make it because it looks so much nicer. You can just use more sand if you want. When I make a batch of substrate, I use 2 parts pumice, just less than 2 parts peat moss, 1 part sand, 1 part crushed glass, and 1 part perlite. You can go with 2 parts sand if you don't have the crushed glass. Let's dump the mix into my soil container here. The first thing you want to do is wet your soil down. Remember to use distilled, pure, rain, or RO water. Try to avoid any minerals or nutrients. The substrate is designed with the same thought process as the water. All of the ingredients are inert, except for the peat moss. None of the ingredients will leach any minerals into the soil. All ingredients are rinsed individually, then after I mix them all together, I rinse the mix again. I do this before I use it personally and before I dry it to sell. This mix will resist water at first, just keep mixing it up and it'll eventually absorb it. Mixing the water first is important. Trying to repot plants in dry soil is kind of difficult. It's much easier to use when it's wet. Also, if you try to repot pings in dry soil, oftentimes you're going to get a lot of the dust come up and hit the leaves, which can kind of make it dirty looking. Now that the soil is nice and wet, let's take a look and prep the planter. Even though you can elect to get a planter that has no holes that you can just top water, pings are much easier to manage if you get a plastic planter that has good drainage. I really like these planters because they have really good drainage holes. They're plastic, so you don't have to worry about them leaching any minerals into the substrate. I also prefer white because they do a good job reflecting light and they don't get too hot. Since they're not kept in full sun normally, this probably isn't too big of a problem, but it's something that I often think about because I grow a lot of Venus flytraps. I also really like the white though, because I just think the pings look really nice in it. Usually, I put a paper towel on the bottom of my planter, but I'm actually all out right now. So I had to use some sphagnum moss. If you don't have any moss, no worries, a paper towel works just fine for this. This helps the substrate keep in contact with the drainage holes and helps wick the water up. If you aren't using drainage holes, there's really no need for the paper towel. Pack the lower inch of the soil pretty tight. You want that layer to keep constant contact with the bottom of the planter. If the soil isn't touching the bottom, the planter can't wick the water up. As you get closer to the top, pack the soil in less and less. Ping roots are shallow and don't travel much, so it's okay if it's a little packed. If you decide not to use the topper, fill your planter all the way to the top. You don't want your plant sitting way down in the planter. If you're using a topper like the crushed glass or the pumice, leave a small amount before you get to the top to allow room to add the topper. The next step is to add the topper. I'm going to show you with both the pumice and the crushed glass, but let's start with the pumice. Cover the entire top with the topper. I think it's easier to do it this way rather than trying to add the topper after setting the plant, especially with pings. The sticky surface makes it really messy if you try to add your topper after putting the plant down on the substrate. Don't make your pumice too deep. The top layer needs to be rather shallow. Once you have your top layer, clear out a spot in the middle where the ping will sit. You have to make sure you clear it out enough so that the roots will touch the substrate. The topper does not provide the roots with water. The roots have to reach down into the substrate. During this step, you might need to make sure and remove a few pieces of topper to make sure your ping roots can get deep enough to the substrate. Once you have your hole, place your ping. You want to press down on the ping very lightly. Try not to push down on the leaves that are sticking up. They will break. Push down on the sides so it helps the roots reach the substrate below. And after that, you're basically done. Let's fill the other one real quick. For this one, I'm using a plastic terracotta looking planter. I also really enjoy this color. Same concept here. Fill up the planter almost to the top and add your topper. Clear a hole in the middle so your plant roots can reach the substrate. Place your ping in the hole and press down gently. And there you go. If you happen to get some debris on the leaves of your ping, don't worry, you can spray them off with a mister. Don't make it a habit of misting pings, they don't particularly like it. However, it's okay to do it occasionally to clean them off. Okay, now that we're done, we get to sit back and admire our creation. Pings are incredibly beautiful, but a little toppings can really help it stand out. The way the glass hits the light is just stunning. I absolutely love it. I also love the darker color of the pumice to help bring out the bright pinks and greens of the ping. Both of these are wonderful options. I actually can't decide which one I prefer. And there we go. Your beautiful pings are ready to be placed under your grow lights or on your windowsill. Remember, make sure to head over to my store and see about buying live ping from me. Substrate, planters, and toppers are also available. Thank you so much for stopping by today. I really appreciate it. I really hope to catch you in my next video. Bye.